Okay, so what should a first-time investor think about when they're considering getting into real estate?
Let's talk about, how to pick the right investment. So what's the kind of key strategy?
What do you think about management? Should investors consider hiring a property manager, or can they self-manage?
Welcome to the TNT Real Estate Podcast, where we spark conversations that set you up for real estate success. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tanya, and each week we bring you expert tips on navigating Northern Ontario's real estate market. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you thrive. So, Tyler.
Yeah.
How was your week? What'd you get up to? You went golfing.
Didn't do much. I did go golfing.
You went golfing. I know you came into the office at like 11 a.m. Totally done golfing.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was good. It was quick. I played awfully, but it's just fun.
Was that your first time this season or what?
No, second.
Oh.
I should be going a lot
How
more,
long does it take you to actually start not sucking?
Forever. I've never not sucked in 20 years of playing golf.
Yeah.
So.
Is it more about just like the social?
It's a nature walk.
Okay.
Nice
you don't walk,
walk.
don't you have a cart?
Sometimes.
Do you sometimes walk?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you walk on Wednesday?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
It depends who you golf with. If you golf with walkers, then you walk.
Yeah.
And if you golf with people that just like to be out there, then you take a cart.
Fun.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a good time.
Awesome.
What'd you get up to?
I don't even know. What did I get up to?
Did you take Rosie for a walk?
No, I didn't. I outsourced that to my 17-year-old son now. He does all that.
Nice.
And Ben headed out of town yesterday. So you should see, I got the biggest good food delivery ever. It was like 3 boxes of like stuff that my 17-year-old will cook for us because, yeah.
That's good.
Why not?
Life skills.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
Good.
I think it's the best way to do the week without Ben.
Speaking of life skills, should we talk about real estate investing?
Yeah, let's talk about real estate. Real estate investing.
Tips, stories, and smart strategies.
Okay. So do we have any smart strategies this week?
I think so.
Yeah.
We always got smart strategies.
Awesome. Okay, so what should a first-time investor think about when they're considering getting into real estate?
There's really 3 things when you're valuing an investment, which is cash flow, which is appreciation, and it's building equity, which is kind of appreciation, but you can also build it with sweat. Right.
So by making improvements, you can increase your equity.
Force appreciation. Yeah,
force appreciation.
So, I mean, what you need to understand, especially with your finances, down payment, credit score, when you come to us, we're going to set you up with a mortgage broker that can kind of help you with all of this, and I'll walk you through the process. But you're going to need to have some decent credit, or you have, if you're working with somebody else, somebody has to have decent credit. You have to understand closing costs. So if it's your first time, then you might get a couple rebates. But for the most part, land transfer tax, lawyer costs, your down payment, which is if it's an investment that you're moving into, maybe as low as 5%. But if it's just straight investment and you have another house, then it's 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Or more, depending on your debt service ratio, right? It could be a little higher.
Absolutely.
I think it's also important to plan for contingencies too, like for repairs. So even thinking ahead, like how much life is left in the roof, how much life is left in the furnace or the boiler or whatever the heating system is, and plan for some unexpected plumbing mishaps, because that'll always happen.
Why do toilets only break in rentals? That's what I want to know.
And on Sundays.
Yeah.
On Sundays. It's always a Sunday with an emergency plumber call.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe another point as well, is to sort of, as you get into real estate owning, have your list of trusted people, the plumbers, the electricians, people you can call anytime, even on a Sunday.
I'm not this organized, but don't you have a checklist that you bring in with clients so they can kind of go through the house and be like, oh, this and this and this?
Yes, I do. No, I don't, but I will.
Oh,
that's a good idea.
I thought I saw it. I
don't think I have a checklist. Oh. No, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So as they're walking through, it's kind of just like a reminder. Okay, we're in the furnace room. Check how old the furnace is. Check how old the water tank is, or is it hot water on demand?
Yeah, I have a buyer-centric one, but I don't have one for investors. That's a good idea.
Okay, I knew you had one.
Let's maybe we should use our AI to do that.
Yeah.
Build us a checklist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what are some of the mistakes that you've seen first-time investors make or know of? Because your investors don't make mistakes.
I mean, when they have representation such as it's hard to make mistakes.
Hard to make mistakes.
But I think this is double-edged, which is I think the mistake is jumping in too quickly without knowing what you're jumping into, without having any expertise of either like even walking through buildings.
Yeah.
They just, they've picked the first one that has a decent cap rate and they buy it, and then they're sometimes happy, sometimes not. But on the other end, I think the biggest mistake is analysis paralysis, where they're, they're looking too much and they're just like, they're caught up. Well, this is a 8% cap rate. Well, this one's 8.1% cap rate. So this could be a better deal, but it has more work to be done. So which one is the true best deal?
Yeah.
Which is really like, they're probably very similar.
Yeah.
So you should just bite on one, whatever one feels better.
Yeah,
to
whatever
yourself.
one feels better, right? Because I think that's very important. It's like sometime you have to jump. You have to make the decision to move forward and buy it. There's definitely risks involved, but if you do your proper due diligence, and maybe one of the things as well is looking at who those tenants are that you're inheriting with the building. Do they have a good history of rent payment? Are there places kept neat and tidy? Any sort of issues that you can sort of see visiting the property? So it's sort of a mix of numbers and also just like feeling of how things are well kept.
So what's like a small piece of advice that you give to, let's say, a first time buyer?
First time investor buyer really is to just, I think neighborhood is the most important. I know you'll get a better cap rate in an area that is not as good. We always sort of rate them, we kind of give them like an alphabetical scale, like A, B, C, D, right? The D neighborhoods and D type properties, well, they'll get the greatest cap rates, but you're going to have so much turnover, and your contingency fund is going to need to be huge for just repairs and just what goes in when you have tenant turnover, right? Every tenant turnover, you're cleaning at least. If not, you're making repairs, you're painting, you're doing all sorts of things. So that can be very expensive. So I would rather get a smaller return on my investment and be in a good neighborhood where I can select the tenants. It's easier to find tenants that will stay longer.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge point, especially when you're looking at these ratings, A, B, C, or D, because we have I would say a decent sized D neighborhood in Sudbury, and the majority, I think it's 80% of the landlord tenant board hearings come from that neighborhood. 20% is the rest of the city. Which I find is crazy. It's another thing that a lot of people don't, high cash flow properties, but obviously you're dealing with high tenant turnover, and I mean, if they're not turning over, maybe they're not paying, right?
Disputes, right? Yeah. I mean, those disputes can be some of the most costly for investors.
Oh, huge.
It's so important to find places that already have good tenants if you're inheriting tenants. Okay,
so let's talk about, how to pick the right investment. So what's the kind of key strategy? Obviously, neighborhood is what we just talked about.
Yeah, neighborhood is very important. Knowing the true numbers. I mean, we talked about numbers, operating expenses, income, etc. It's pretty easy to verify the income. It's the expenses, I think, that you need to do a little bit more digging into. So just make sure you get all those the actual bills from the property owner for the last year, or maybe their statement of rentals that they've provided to CRA. That can be super helpful for the last 3 years. So looking at the expenses and running the numbers, I think that's very important for picking your right investment.
And I've never kind of ran into this where, hydro costs were like exorbitant for the neighborhood, or for like maybe a triplex that just like didn't seem right. There's not that many that are that far off, but there was one investor, I think it was an investor podcast that I was looking at, but he always verifies with the tenants, has there been any plumbing issues? Because maybe like even like a small drip in a shower or a bathtub, that's adding $1,000 a year onto these small fixes. Like he just goes in and fixes all the little things that the tenants are like, yeah, my plumbing's dripping, or my sink won't stop dripping, or whatever. Fixes those up and then gains maybe something that the current landlord doesn't even know, but he just goes up, fixes it, and then saves $1,000 on your costs.
That's a really great tip. I mean, not only is he going to be saving money, but I think it also helps to build a really great rapport with that tenant.
Yeah.
If you're purchasing the property, sometimes they can be nervous with that new landlord and that change of ownership.
Yeah.
But if you go in and just take care of all the little things that they've been sort of neglected over the years, as they can be the smallest things, and you're going to build so much rapport with that tenant.
Okay, so first time investment buyer, are you telling them to buy a fixer-upper or something turnkey?
It's going to depend. It's going to depend on their tolerance for doing things. I have had clients who don't want to do any maintenance whatsoever, right? Sometimes the idea of a condo or that type of thing has great allure, but the numbers don't always make sense. I prefer fixer-upper. If you can do it and you're first timer, it's a great place to learn. Maybe don't buy a big building, maybe just a small duplex to start. I love a fixer-upper because you can make it your own. You can, build equity really quickly, and you can sort of force appreciation a little bit better. How about you? What do you like to do?
I'm the same as you. It really depends on the client. I have, a young gentleman right now that's looking. He's young. He's, has a girlfriend, but has a lot more time on his hands. So I'm telling him, and he's handy too. So buy something that, needs some lipstick, force appreciate that property, buy it, under market value, maybe, because maybe people are overlooking it because of the work that needs to be done. But it's the way to go, especially when you have the time on your hands. Now, when you get into maybe your late 30s or 40s and you have kids and a family and responsibilities, and you don't have time every weekend or, after work every day to go in and fix a property, then, buy something a little bit more turnkey or hire a contractor to do the work. But first time investment buyer in Sudbury is typically a little bit younger. So I would say buy something that you can, put some sweat equity in.
What do you think about management? Should investors consider hiring a property manager, or can they self-manage?
I would say no for property 1, maybe 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah.
You need to cut your teeth. You need to understand what management actually looks like. You need to manage yourself. So when you do get into having enough properties and you hire a manager, which is the smart idea, you can understand, okay, this tenant is saying this to me. And then you're like, okay, I had this scenario a couple of years ago. You kind of start understanding client relationships. I say client as in like tenant relationships. You start understanding why, maybe somebody's not paying rent this month, so it's just like, it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. And I think all real estate investors need to kind of dive into that before they hire management.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought of it that way, that, the first few, you really do learn a lot. Yeah. So it's good to sort of be there and be that hands-on, but sometimes people don't have time for it. So I think true. Maybe in that sense, they should hire a manager if they've got
if you have absolutely no time, if you're traveling or busy or
or maybe you don't have the contacts yet for like the plumber, although that's what your realtor is for.
That's true.
Call your realtor. They will set you up with who they know.
Yeah. And I think it also, just to finish this point, I think it also is kind of a good learning curve. So when you've been woken up at midnight to an emergency going on, when you see that little charge of $150 for a new toilet in the middle of the night, let's say, from your property manager, you're like, oh my God, remember that one time I would pay $150 10 times over to not have this phone call right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about, due diligence process and stuff, but there's things that you can do for real estate investing that don't have to do with actual homes. And there's other ways to invest in properties too that we aren't going to get into today. But what are a couple things that you can, tell a first time, maybe somebody that's brand new into real estate, besides like walking through houses and checking out deals and crunching numbers, what are a couple little things that you can do, not real estate related, but still real estate related?
Sort of build your knowledge before you make the jump into real investment. I think you can get a lot of great information online, of course. YouTube is a great source if you can find somebody who is a really knowledgeable sort of speaker and will dissect the numbers for you, right? I think there's a lot of good examples on people who run through scenarios of buildings with incomes, expenses, and sort of contingencies. You can learn a lot about bookkeeping for that type of business as well. I think that's something you need to know about once you get into investment, is how do you track all your expenses and your income and provide that to your accountant. So there's great resources on YouTube, great people there for sure. I'm sure AI, if you had a good conversation with your ChatGPT assistant, it might kind of banter back and forth with you and provide some sources there that you can use. Another thing that we had talked about was like, meeting people who are investors or who have done that as well. And there's certain things in town. I believe here in the north, there's investor meetups that happen, so you can meet with people there. And we're also hosting various things at our office.
Yeah, we host our investor meetup once a month usually. And then obviously there's other kind of networking events that you can kind of go to and meet. And then, I feel like once you meet one real estate investor, they have their whole I want to call them portfolios and networks of people. So they're just, you just have to have that first conversation, then it just grows from there. And I think of people like Alvin Wong that we've had on here. Like he runs a real estate networking event up here, which is fantastic. A bunch of people show up. So it's just about being out there, having conversations, and obviously doing your due diligence and buying properties.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about what first-time investors should look for in a first investment property, how they should look at the numbers, plan for contingencies, and do their own due diligence as well.
So if this has inspired you to make the jump into real estate investing, give us a shout today.
Thanks for tuning in to the TNT Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave us a comment, subscribe, and share with a friend who might be interested in real estate.
We'll catch you next time, and until then, stay ahead in real estate.